You guys got to hear a lot,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
from members of Congress. Are you concerned, or how do you feel about the job that they may be doing or may not be doing as it relates specifically to this issue and others?
So, I mean, ICE has already been funded $76 billion for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think a good way to find out what ICE is doing is, you know, we've got this great checks and balances in our country, right? And as a former House and Senate lawyer, we have oversight hearings. If you really want to drill down and find out what exactly ICE is doing, have oversight hearings. But to use this, you know, constant shutdowns, which we've had far too many in modern history, to think that you're going to get information or get a particular agency to act a certain way, I just don't think it's fair to the American people. I think you've passed, you know, you've passed this budget. The agency is going to be funded. Why do we keep doing these shutdowns? Why don't you get to the business of the American people and have oversight hearings? It's completely within their purview. And have these hearings and find out exactly what ICE and other law enforcement agencies are doing.
So someone called this a performance.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfectly reasonable thing. It's within their purview. Why aren't they doing that?
Dominic, why aren't they doing it?
You know, Larry, first of all, I was going to say, it feels like I'm having deja vu. Another government shutdown 3 months later.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not just an issue of oversight, right? I think that Congress has been abdicating a lot of its duties this term, especially this term, you know, in terms of oversight. But there are some real structural reforms that need to happen, right? Like, we don't need hearings to know that, like, ICE agents are, you know, going into communities masked, right? And trying to hide their identity. You know, we don't need testimonies to understand that they're not using body cam footage nearly as much as what they could be using, right? And so, you know, we don't need testimonies to know that they're shooting American citizens, you know, all, you know, in Minneapolis and throughout the country. We don't need more hearings to determine those things. We need reforms. And so, you know, Democrats are the party right now. They're actually trying to reform the system. They're trying to, you know, make sure that we're not targeting American citizens with ICE, which ICE really shouldn't be targeting American citizens within their purview that they have from Congress in the first place. So, I mean, no, this shutdown is not just about getting answers to some questions, which I agree needs to happen. It is about targeted reforms because this agency is out of control, and most Americans, you know, to your point earlier, 59% of Americans would agree that it's out of order right now.
But how are you going to get the reforms? This is the process by which you're going to get reforms, right? How do we define reforms? You need to pass rules, you need to pass laws. That is Congress's responsibility. I'm not in Congress. None of us here on this panel is. So I don't know how we think we're going to fix ICE if you don't go through a process of following the rules and reforming the rules. You have to do that. I mean, this is what Congress's job is.
You know, it's interesting. You brought up a point about the reforms. You know, when you talk about Republicans, they say, listen, we need reforms too. We need to make sure that our law enforcement is safe when they're on the streets. We need to make sure that our law enforcement officers are protected and able to do their jobs effectively and efficiently. And that also means too that we can't have a public that may be attacking them, infringing on their rights in some way. What do you say to that? Because there is a larger argument from Democrats, at least on the other side of this, but very little has been said about the way in which law enforcement is out there protecting the American public each and every day, and the responsibilities that they have in enforcing the rule of law.
Well, Larry, I'll tell you, I'm a good Lutheran. I don't believe in violence at all across the board. But the issue right now is, where is the focus at? Because not a single ICE officer has died in Minneapolis, right? American citizens have died.
Does it take someone to die in order for there to be reasonable reform?
No, I think that there is room for reasonable reform, right? And I do believe that if you're serving our country and you're upholding our Constitution, that you should be safe and executing those duties, right? However, the reason why Democrats are asking for reform right now is because American citizens are the ones being shot and killed at the moment. And so you can talk about reform and also making sure that, you know, individuals serving our nation are safe, but there is a real crisis right now. You know, every few days, a new American is being shot and killed in our country, especially by an agency that is not supposed to be interacting with citizens of our nation. And so, when we're talking about reforms, you have to fix the urgent issues, right? And, I will tell you, I'm not going to be hypocritical about this. If ICE agents were being, harmed in the line of duty every day in Minneapolis, I would also say you need to have reforms to ensure that they can carry out their duties in a safe and effective manner. But right now, the focus is on American citizens because they're the ones who are being shot at the moment.
So I want to talk about law enforcement for a minute. So this is something I learned first year of law school. There are two sort of bodies of people who can take away your life legally, a judge and law enforcement. And so, we know that the jobs of law enforcement at all levels, federal, state, and local, it's complicated. I mean, law enforcement are dealing with, every day on the street. They are dealing with mentally ill people. They're dealing with criminals. I mean, in the moment, these law enforcement individuals have to make such calculated risks that unless you are in that situation, I think it's really hard to judge what these people have to do every day. It is not an easy job. It's not like we've got people signing up to be, to be law enforcement at all levels. So I want to understand what happened, but I just think these jobs are not easy. And to your point, we need people to follow the law because this is what the job of law enforcement is to enforce the law. And so we need citizens to follow the law.
Yeah.
Because then if we don't have that on either side, we have utter chaos.
Well, I will say, I've not heard of the law that Alex Preddy broke that decided that his life should be ended, right? And I think that you are right. I know plenty of people who work in law enforcement, right? And I work with them in my daily life. And, I do believe in having proper safety and making sure that people have proper training so they know how to de-escalate situations to make sure that everyone is safe in that situation. But right now, it's hard to defend what ICE is doing because they're not de-escalating, right? And both of the, killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy that we've seen, that could have been handled so much better. Those people should still be alive. And I think that you really need to ask, how do we reform ICE in a productive way that aligns with the mission that they're trying to achieve? How do we make sure that we're getting, any violent criminals who are here illegally out of the country, right? But American citizens should not be dying in the process, especially when this is all just a showman tactic from Donald Trump, because he doesn't know how to do solutions that aren't showman tactics.
But that's part of the problem. I don't think we actually know what happened.
Because we haven't had an investigation that's been
we
completed
don't
at
know
this
what
point,
happened.
yes.
We know a gun went off. But what does that mean? We just don't know. I wasn't there.
I don't know. Those recordings, you could maybe make the argument with Renee Good killing because the footage is, from one specific angle, right? With the Alex Preddy case, we have footage from all sides of different angles. And
I'm not trusting the footage. I think we need to.
I feel like
I've seen media reports. I've seen the footage. I'm like, okay, it doesn't look good, but I'd still like to know.
Right. Which is the point of an investigation, right? That we take all of those things into consideration to come down with a final determination as to what exactly happened in this series and the events in which it did occur.
Right. It's not good. It looks terrible, but I think we still need to know a little bit. We need to know a lot more.
Americans don't have faith in, have faith that this government is going to properly investigate in a fair and impartial way, right? And when it comes, I know you brought up independent investigators earlier, but the issue is this administration doesn't believe in independence. You look at what they're doing with the Fed, you look at how they're interacting with tariffs and things of that nature. It's hard for Americans to actually believe what's coming out of this administration.
But you know what? This is the system we have. Is someone going to recreate something else? This is what we've got. We've got an IG, an independent agents, independent body within DHS whose job is to investigate this. And they have to do their job.
Yeah.
This is all we've got, folks. Are we going to make up something else?
Well, that's why Democrats are fighting for reform right now.
Well, I think both sides are fighting for reform. I think there are plenty of Republicans who also would like to get to the bottom of this. I can't give it all to the Democrats.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
Some Republicans.
And I think you've heard from some in the House and the Senate who all said that this requires
they're both alarmed. Both sides are alarmed.
Thorough investigation.
Yes, absolutely.
That is comprehensive. I want to bring in Dr. Andra Gillespe, Associate Professor of Political Science and Director of the James Weldon Johnson Institute at Emory University. Dr. Gillespe, you've got to hear a lot over the past 45 minutes. I want to sort of get your assessment in terms of where the conversation is nationally as it relates specifically to ICE, and really how these negotiations that have been taking place on Capitol Hill really demonstrates sort of the conversation that's taking place amongst our legislators and our leaders about maybe what is appropriate and what is not appropriate as it relates specifically to law enforcement.
Thank you. Well, as Dr. Holtz has already mentioned, the national climate seems like it opposes much of what the Trump administration is doing with regarding ICE enforcement. So a majority of respondents in recent public opinion surveys have indicated that they disapprove of how ICE is handling its business, and that they are saying, depending on how you word the question, that ICE has gone too far in its enforcement capability. So this doesn't take away from, the approval that some have given to the Trump administration for closing the southern border, but they're looking at this ICE enforcement in a very, very different light. And that's what Senate Democrats were considering when they were taking their stand this week. I'm going to disagree with some things that I've heard here. I think that what you see Senate Democrats trying to do here is actually a very important part of checks and balances, right? Not only is oversight an important part of checks and balances, it's also the idea that you bring them in for hearings to hold people accountable, but you're doing so because Congress holds the power of the purse. And so if Congress does not like how the executive branch is carrying out and implementing and enforcing the laws that they pass, they have the right to withhold funding for it. And that's the argument that Senate Democrats are making here. We're going to withhold additional ICE funding beyond what's already been appropriated in the big, beautiful bill, which includes things that are urgent and necessary for this coming fiscal year, like FEMA, for instance, and even some expanded ICE operations, until ICE indicates that it is going to do what Congress wants it to do and not necessarily what President Trump and others in the White House want them to do in carrying out and implementing the laws as they intended for it. And what they're saying is that they're looking for consensus in Congress that the voice is not depriving people of their Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights, which I should point out actually apply to anybody in the United States, not just people who have citizenship, but also so that you're also making sure that you're not doing things like killing people in the streets. So that's why they're holding back from this right now. And I think that this is actually an important opportunity for at least Senate Democrats to be holding up the banner, with some Republicans, if they choose to go along with this, to say that it's time for Congress to step up and actually hold the executive branch accountable and exert true checks and balances.
Well, Dr. Gillespe, certainly we've seen Republicans sort of demonstrate an openness to where Democrats are on this particular issue. And I think based on what we've seen in the last year, I think 2025 has shown us a lot that it was no doubt rather contentious. This, however, feels a lot different in terms of how this is being approached by both Republicans and Democrats. Does that point to any sort of change that we're seeing right now in the political landscape, especially as we think about the midterms this year?
Well, I mean, I think we are still in an era of hyper polarization, so I expect that there's still going to be a lot of polarization. It's going to be really interesting to see how the debate folds over the next 2 weeks as they deal with the stopgap legislation specifically for DHS. So Democrats have made their demands. They seem to be very straightforward. And for them, I don't think that there's much room for compromise in terms of giving up one of their demands. I think the question is, what might they concede in other ways in order to, get some buy-in from some of their Republican colleagues. When I look at the list of people who voted against the stopgap, knowing some of their ideological priors, I will have to wait to confirm, like through their press releases, why they took particular stances. I suspect that some of those Republicans did so because they just opposed the stopgap in principle and they wanted sort of a full, clean bill to go forward. So I think the question is, what are the remaining Republican moderates willing to do along with Senate Democrats to ensure that guardrails are put into place to try to put checks and to try to require, that DHS and that ICE in particular actually respect people's civil liberties and civil rights. And what kind of compromises will be made with them. So, for instance, like you're looking at Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator Lindsey Graham, is making demands that that there be something to try to stop cities and states from having some type of sanctuary status. So, I think we'll see if there are any compromises made on that. But I would be very surprised to see Democrats compromising on their demands that ICE agents stop wearing masks, that they be perfectly identified at all times, and also that they stop walking around in unmarked cars and doing other things that people have found very troubling and very problematic from a safety standpoint, but then also from a civil liberties standpoint.
Dr. Andra Gillespe, thank you so much for your time, and good morning to you, friend. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good day, okay? John Hatton, Staff Vice President for Policy and Programs at the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association. He and I spoke, and we talked about what the impact of either a short or long-term shutdown will have on the federal workforce. Take a listen. And to your knowledge, have federal employees been told to prepare for a shutdown?
Not yet, because we haven't gotten there yet, and it looks like things are trending in the right direction. But I would expect that to happen maybe sometime tomorrow.